What would you risk for a stranger? In the heart of Chicago's most exclusive restaurant, a waiter sees what no one else does. A betrayal unfolding in real time. One handwritten note. 10 seconds of courage. A decision that will shatter two lives and rebuild them into something neither could imagine. This is the story of Marcus Lane and Elena Voss, two people from different worlds who discovered that sometimes the biggest risks lead to the most unexpected places. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The thing about working late shifts at Aurelius is that you stop seeing people as people. They become plates. Table 7 needs their salmon. Table 12 wants another bottle of the Bordeaux. Table 3, the woman in the charcoal suit hasn't touched her risotto in 20 minutes. Marcus Lane moved through the dining room like a shadow, which was exactly how he preferred it. Invisible, efficient, forgettable. In the 3 years he'd worked at Chicago's most expensive restaurant, he'd served senators, celebrities, tech billionaires, and at least one person who was definitely in witness protection. He'd learned that rich people didn't actually want exceptional service. They wanted to feel alone in a room full of other people, each pretending the others didn't exist. It was 10:47 p.m. on a Thursday in February, the kind of night where the cold didn't just bite. It punched you in the chest and stole your breath. Outside, Lake Michigan was freezing over in patches, and the wind howled down Michigan Avenue like it had a personal vendetta against anything warm-blooded. Inside Aurelius, though, everything was golden light and hushed voices, the kind of place where even the air felt expensive. Marcus balanced 4 plates on his left arm, muscle memory from a decade of food service, and navigated between tables with practiced precision. His feet hurt. His lower back ached. His daughter Ava had texted him twice already asking when he'd be home, and he'd lied both times, saying soon when he knew it'd be at least another hour. But the tips at Aurelius paid for Ava's dance classes. They paid for the tutoring she needed to keep up in her AP courses. They paid for the laptop she needed for school, the one he'd bought refurbished but told her was new because he couldn't stand the look in her eyes when she thought they couldn't afford things. So he smiled at the couple at table 9, refreshed their water glasses without being asked, and pretended his entire body didn't feel like it was held together with duct tape and desperation. Table 3, though. Table 3 kept pulling his attention. The woman sitting there alone wasn't famous, at least not movie star famous, but Marcus recognized the quality of her isolation. She sat with the kind of perfect posture that came from boardrooms and negotiation tables, her phone face down beside her plate, her eyes scanning the room with the calculation of someone used to reading every angle. Elena Voss. He'd heard the hostess say her name when she arrived. No reservation, which at Aurelius was basically blasphemy, but the manager had materialized a table anyway. That told Marcus everything he needed to know about her importance. She was maybe 40, with dark hair pulled into a knot so severe it looked like it might be load-bearing. Sharp cheekbones, sharper eyes. The kind of woman who probably had an assistant to schedule her dental cleanings, and a lawyer on speed dial. And she was scared. Marcus had been doing this job long enough to read the tells, the way her fingers drummed against the tablecloth, the way her gaze kept flicking to the entrance, the way she'd ordered the most expensive bottle of wine on the menu but hadn't drunk any of it. She was waiting for someone. At 11:03, that someone arrived. The man who walked through Aurelius's front door looked like he'd been assembled in a factory that produced bodyguards for action movies. 6'4", maybe 240, with shoulders that barely fit through the doorframe. Dark suit, earpiece, the kind of face that had forgotten how to smile somewhere around 2003. He moved directly to Elena's table, didn't sit, leaned down to speak quietly. Marcus was refilling wine at table 8, close enough to observe, far enough to seem uninvolved. Elena's face didn't change. That was the first thing Marcus noticed. Whatever the bodyguard said, she'd been expecting it. She nodded once, stood, gathered her coat. They should have left then. That's what bothered Marcus later, when he replayed the moment in his head for the 1,000th time. If they'd just walked out, maybe everything would have been different. Maybe he could have convinced himself he'd imagined the whole thing. But Elena stopped. She stopped, turned back to her table, and reached for her purse, and the bodyguard's hand, which had been at his side, moved to his jacket. It was fast. So fast that if Marcus had blinked, he would have missed it entirely. The bodyguard's fingers slipped inside his jacket, touched something at his hip, then returned to neutral. 2 seconds, maybe 3. Elena didn't notice. She was looking at her phone, thumb scrolling, completely unaware. But Marcus saw. He'd grown up on the South Side, in a neighborhood where you learn to read violence the way other kids learn to read picture books. He knew what a threat assessment looked like. He knew the difference between someone checking their weapon and someone preparing to use it. The bodyguard wasn't checking. Marcus's hands went numb. The wine bottle he was holding suddenly weighed 1,000 pounds. Elena returned her phone to her purse, smiled at something on the screen, the first genuine expression he'd seen from her all night, and started walking toward the exit. The bodyguard followed 3 steps behind. Standard protection formation. Except it wasn't. Because the bodyguard's right hand was still hovering near his hip and his eyes weren't scanning for threats. They were fixed on the back of Elena's head with the focus of a hunting dog that just heard the gun cock. Marcus's brain went into overdrive. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe the guy was just being cautious. Maybe Marcus had spent too many years in rough neighborhoods, and now he saw danger everywhere, even in Chicago's most exclusive restaurant, where the biggest threat was usually someone's Black American Express getting declined. But his gut, the same gut that had pulled him out of a bad situation outside a liquor store when he was 17, the same gut that had told him to take the waiter job instead of the higher-paying warehouse gig that turned out to be a front for something illegal, his gut was screaming. Elena was 10 feet from the door. Marcus looked around the dining room. The other servers were clearing tables, refilling water, doing the choreographed dance of high-end service. The manager was in the back, probably counting receipts. The bartender was polishing glasses. No one else saw. Elena was 5 feet from the door. Marcus's daughter flashed through his mind. Ava, 14 years old, currently at home doing homework and waiting for him to come back so they could watch the baking show she was obsessed with. Ava, who still slept with the stuffed elephant he'd won for her at Navy Pier when she was 6. Ava, who was the only good thing he'd ever done in his life. If he was wrong about this, if he made a scene, embarrassed a powerful woman, got himself fired, Ava would be the one who suffered. But if he was right and did nothing... Elena reached for the door handle. Marcus moved. He didn't think about it, didn't plan it, didn't calculate the risk. His body just moved, cutting across the dining room with the wine bottle still in his hand, his heart hammering against his ribs. "Excuse me, ma'am." His voice came out steadier than he felt. "You forgot to sign your check." Elena paused, hand on the door, and turned back. Confusion flickered across her face. "I paid with a card. At the table." "Yes, ma'am." Marcus reached into his apron, pulled out the leather check holder he'd grabbed from table 3. But there was a discrepancy. "If you could just verify the amount before you go." It was the thinnest lie in the history of lies. Any second she was going to call him on it, ask for the manager, get him fired on the spot. But the bodyguard had stopped too, and now he was looking at Marcus with the flat, evaluating stare of someone deciding whether you were a threat or just an inconvenience. Marcus kept his expression neutral, boring, the face of a minimum wage worker just trying to avoid a write-up. He held out the check holder. Elena glanced at her bodyguard, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. She sighed, walked back to Marcus, opened the leather folder. Inside was the check, and beneath it, scrawled on a cocktail napkin in Marcus's handwriting, "Your bodyguard is going to kill you. Do not go with him. Do not react. Nod if you understand." For a moment, nothing happened. The restaurant kept moving around them. Silverware clinking, quiet conversations, jazz piano floating from the speakers. Elena stared at the napkin like it was written in a language she'd forgotten how to read. Then, slowly, she looked up at Marcus. He kept his expression blank, submissive, the way you were supposed to look at customers. But his eyes said everything his face couldn't. "I'm serious. Please believe me. Please." Elena's gaze flicked to the bodyguard, who was standing 5 feet away, watching, then back to Marcus. She nodded. Once, almost invisible, Marcus's entire nervous system flooded with adrenaline. "Everything looks correct?" he asked, his voice still professionally bland. "Yes." Elena's voice was steady, controlled. Whatever terror she was feeling, she buried it deep. "Actually, I'd like to use the restroom before I go. Is that through the back?" The bodyguard stepped forward. Ms. Voss, we really should. I'll be 2 minutes, James. She didn't look at him. Wait here. It wasn't a request. The bodyguard, James, hesitated. Marcus could see the calculation happening behind his eyes, the adjustment of whatever plan he'd made. Finally, he nodded. Of course. I'll be right here. Elena handed the check holder back to Marcus, her fingers brushing his for half a second. Then she walked toward the back of the restaurant, toward the hallway that led to the restrooms and the kitchen and the service exit. Marcus stood frozen, still holding the check holder, aware that he'd just done something irrevocable. James was staring at him now, really staring, and Marcus knew that look. He'd seen it before, in the eyes of guys who'd decided you were a problem that needed solving. You work here long? James asked. His voice was pleasant, conversational, the kind of voice that made the question feel like a threat. 3 years. Like it? It's a job. James smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Good benefits? Good enough. The silence stretched. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat, could feel sweat forming at the small of his back, despite the restaurant's careful climate control. Then Elena emerged from the hallway. She wasn't alone. She'd come back with the restaurant's manager, Victor, a thin man in his 50s who treated every service shift like it was opening night at the opera. Victor was talking rapidly, gesturing, and Elena was nodding along with an expression of polite concern. Simply unacceptable, Victor was saying as they approached. I assure you, Ms. Voss, this has never happened before. Marcus, what's this about a billing error? Marcus's mind went blank. He'd used the billing error as an excuse to get Elena to stop, but he hadn't actually created one. He was holding a check that was perfectly correct, with a credit card receipt signed and dated. Before he could answer, Elena spoke. There was a double charge on my card, she said smoothly. I noticed it on my phone. I was going to call the bank in the morning, but your waiter very helpfully caught it before I left. She smiled at Marcus, and there was something in that smile, gratitude, recognition, a silent acknowledgement that they were now co-conspirators in a lie neither of them fully understood yet. Victor immediately went into crisis management mode. I am mortified. This is absolutely... Marcus, take Ms. Voss to my office. I'll personally reverse the charge and provide a full refund for tonight's meal. Please, Ms. Voss, accept my deepest apologies. That's really not necessary, Elena started, but Victor was already ushering her toward the back, toward his office, which was in the opposite direction of the front door and James. James moved to follow. Sir, I'm sorry, but the office is staff only, Victor said, his voice carrying the polite firmness of someone who'd kicked out drunk celebrities and petty criminals without breaking a sweat. I'm sure you understand. Ms. Voss will be just a few minutes. James's jaw tightened. I don't leave Ms. Voss. It's fine, James. Elena's voice was calm, authoritative. Wait by the car. I'll text you when I'm finished. For a long moment, James didn't move. Then, slowly, he nodded. 5 minutes. He walked toward the front door, movements controlled, deliberate. Marcus watched him go, watched him push through the entrance and disappear into the Chicago night. As soon as he was gone, Victor turned to Elena. I must apologize again for... Is there a back exit? Elena interrupted. Victor blinked. I'm sorry? A service exit, kitchen staff entrance, loading dock, anything that doesn't go through the front. Well, yes, but I need to leave through it, right now. Victor looked at Marcus, confusion written across his face. Marcus just shrugged, trying to look as bewildered as Victor felt. Elena pulled out her phone, typed rapidly, then looked at Marcus. You, waiter. What's your name? Marcus Lane. Marcus Lane, I need you to come with me. Ma'am, I'm working. My shift doesn't end until How much do you make in a night? The question stopped him cold. Excuse me? Tips, salary, everything. How much for tonight's shift? Marcus did the math in his head. Maybe 300? Good night. Elena opened her purse, pulled out a stack of bills held together with a silver clip, and counted out 1500s. She held them toward Marcus. This is for 3 hours of your time, starting now. Marcus stared at the money. $1,500. That was half his rent. That was Ava's dance recital costume and new jazz shoes. That was the laptop payment he'd been dreading. "What do you need me to do?" he asked quietly. "I don't know yet." Elena's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. "But that man out front is going to kill me tonight, and you're the only person in this entire city who knows it." Victor made a sound like a deflating balloon. "I'm calling the police." "No." Elena's voice was sharp. "No police, not yet, not until I figure out who sent him." "Who sent Ms. Voss? I really must insist." Elena turned to him, and something in her expression made Victor stop talking. "My head of security is currently waiting outside your restaurant to murder me, which means someone in my company, someone I trust, hired him to do it. If I call the police now, that person will know I survived. They'll disappear, cover their tracks, and try again. So, no. No police? Not yet." She looked back at Marcus. "You don't know me. You have no reason to help me. But you saw something no one else saw, and you took a risk to warn me. That tells me you're either very brave or very stupid." "Probably the second one," Marcus muttered. Despite everything, Elena almost smiled. "Will you help me?" Marcus thought about Ava, about the bills piled on their kitchen counter, about the way his daughter looked at him sometimes, with a mix of love and worry that no 14-year-old should have to feel. He thought about the bodyguard outside, about the cold calculation in his eyes. He thought about the woman standing in front of him, shaking but standing, scared but not running. "Yeah," he heard himself say. "Yeah, I'll help." Elena nodded once, decisive. Then she turned to Victor. "I was never here tonight. The billing error was a misunderstanding. Marcus walked me out the back because I asked him to. If anyone asks, that's all you know." Victor opened his mouth, closed it, then nodded. I'll need to comp your meal for the inconvenience." "Fine. Whatever you need to do." Elena was already moving toward the kitchen, Marcus following. "Is there a car service you trust? Not a ride share, a private company." "My cousin runs a car service," Marcus said. "He's discreet. Call him. Tell him to meet us 3 blocks away. Pay him whatever he wants." They pushed through the kitchen doors into the controlled chaos of the dinner rush winding down. Line cooks were breaking down their stations. Dishwashers were spraying plates. The sous chef was yelling about inventory. Nobody paid attention to Marcus and Elena as they navigated toward the back, toward the service exit that opened onto an alley behind the restaurant. Marcus pulled out his phone, dialed his cousin Dre. It rang 4 times before Dre picked up, music blaring in the background. "Yo, Marcus, I'm kind of in the middle of... I need a car, right now. 3 blocks from Aurelius, corner of State and Erie. Can you be there in 10 minutes? A pause. The music in the background cut off. "You in trouble?" "Not me. A client." "Can you do it?" "Yeah, man. Yeah, I'll be there. Black Lincoln. I'll flash the lights." "Thanks, Dre. I owe you." "You owe me an explanation is what you owe me." Marcus hung up, turned to Elena. 10 minutes. She nodded, then pushed open the service exit. The alley hit them like a physical force. The temperature had dropped even further, and the wind was brutal, carrying sleet that felt like tiny knives against exposed skin. Dumpsters lined one side of the alley, and steam rose from a vent in the building across from them. Elena pulled her coat tighter, but it was clear she'd dressed for a car service directly to a heated building, not a Chicago winter night. She was already shivering. Marcus shrugged off his jacket, a thin thing, barely better than nothing, but warmer than what she had, and held it toward her. "I'm fine," she said. "You're freezing. Take it." For a moment, their eyes met. Then Elena took the jacket, pulled it over her shoulders. "Thank you." They started walking, keeping to the shadows. Marcus led them away from Aurelius, away from the front entrance where James would be waiting, would be realizing that 5 minutes had become 10, would be getting suspicious. "Tell me about him," Marcus said quietly. "Your bodyguard. James. How long has he worked for you?" 4 years. He was recommended by my head of security, Thomas Garrett, former Secret Service. Impeccable record. Elena's voice was tight, controlled, but Marcus could hear the betrayal underneath. "I trusted him with my life, literally. I've had death threats, corporate espionage attempts, a stalker situation 2 years ago. James was there for all of it. He saved me twice. Once from a car accident, once from a man who got past building security. Or he was establishing credibility, Marcus said, making himself indispensable so that when the time came, nobody would suspect him. Elena stopped walking. That's a terrifying thought. It's a smart one, though. If you wanted to kill someone and get away with it, that's how you do it. Be the hero until the moment you become the villain. You sound like you've thought about this before. Marcus shrugged. I read a lot of thrillers, keeps me awake during slow shifts. Elena studied him for a moment, and Marcus suddenly felt very aware of how he must look to her. A waiter in a white shirt and black slacks, no jacket now, standing in an alley in February helping a woman he'd never met before escape a murder attempt. Why did you help me? She asked. It was a good question. Marcus wasn't sure he had a good answer. I saw something wrong, he said finally. Couldn't just not do anything. Most people would have. Yeah, well, most people are smarter than me. They kept walking. 3 blocks felt like 3 miles in the cold. Marcus's phone buzzed, a text from Ava asking if he'd remembered to buy milk. He felt a stab of guilt, typed back a quick yes even though he hadn't, made a mental note to stop on the way home, assuming he made it home. The thought appeared unbidden. James knew what Marcus looked like, knew his name, could easily find out where he worked, where he lived. If James was willing to kill his employer, he wouldn't hesitate to eliminate a witness. Marcus had just put a target on his own back, which meant he'd put one on Ava's too. The realization made his steps falter, Elena noticed. What's wrong? I need to make a call. He dialed Ava. She picked up on the first ring. Dad, did you forget the milk? Ava, listen to me. I need you to pack a bag, clothes for a few days, your laptop, anything important. Call Mrs. Chen upstairs. Ask if you can stay with her tonight. Silence. Then, what's going on? Nothing. There's a situation at work. I might be late, really late. I don't want you alone. Dad, you're scaring me. But Marcus closed his eyes. I know, baby. I know. But I need you to trust me, okay? Go to Mrs. Chen's. I'll explain everything tomorrow. Another pause. Marcus could hear the television in the background, could picture Ava standing in their small living room, phone pressed to her ear, trying to decide whether to believe him. Okay, she said finally, but you have to promise you're not in trouble. It was the easiest lie and the hardest one. I promise. They said goodbye. Marcus pocketed his phone, aware that Elena had been listening. You have a daughter, she said. It wasn't a question. Yeah, 14. Marcus trailed off, unsure how to finish that sentence. She's everything. She's the reason I get up in the morning. She's why I work 60-hour weeks and still can't afford to live somewhere safe. You should go back, Elena said. This isn't your problem. I'll pay you for tonight, give you something extra for the risk, but you should go. Make sure your daughter is safe. It was a reasonable suggestion, the smart play. Marcus thought about James, about the cold efficiency in his eyes, about the fact that Marcus had just inserted himself into something he didn't understand, couldn't control. He saw me, Marcus said quietly. Your bodyguard. He saw me give you that note, saw me talk to you. Even if I walk away now, he knows I know something. Elena went very still. I didn't think about that. I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking clearly. It's okay. We'll figure it out. We. Marcus met her eyes. You're not the only one who's in this now. A car turned onto the street ahead. A black Lincoln, lights flashing twice. Dre. They hurried toward it. Dre leaned out the window, took one look at Elena, then at Marcus, and whistled low. Man, when you said a client, I thought you meant someone from the restaurant. Not. He gestured vaguely at Elena, who, despite the fear and the cold and the fact that someone had just tried to kill her, still radiated the kind of presence that made it clear she was used to running board meetings and negotiating million-dollar deals. Just drive, Marcus said, opening the back door. I'll explain later. Elena slid in. Marcus followed. The warmth of the car's interior felt like absolution. Where to? Dre asked, pulling away from the curb. Elena and Marcus exchanged glances. Somewhere safe, Elena said. Somewhere no one would think to look for me. Your place? Dre suggested. No. If James is compromised, he knows everywhere I go. My apartment, my office, my usual hotels. All of it. Friends? Family? I don't have... Elena stopped, seemed to recalibrate. My parents are dead. I have a brother in Seattle, but we haven't spoken in 3 years. Friends. She laughed, but it was hollow. I have business associates, networking contacts. People I see at charity galas and quarterly reviews. I don't have friends. The admission hung in the air. Marcus thought about his own life, the thin network of relationships he'd built over years of single parenthood and long work hours. His cousin Dre, Mrs. Chen upstairs, who watched Ava sometimes. A few other waiters at Aurelius. It wasn't much, but it was something. Elena had money, power, influence. But she didn't have anyone she could call at midnight and say, I need help. Except now she did. She had a waiter she'd met 2 hours ago who'd risked his job to slip her a warning on a cocktail napkin. My apartment, Marcus heard himself say. Both Elena and Dre turned to stare at him. Your apartment, Elena repeated. Marcus, I can't. It's small. It's in a rough neighborhood, and the heat's inconsistent. But nobody's going to look for you there. Nobody knows we have any connection. It's the last place anyone would think to search. Your daughter, Elena said, is staying with a neighbor tonight. It's just me. Marcus, this is too much. I'm already putting you at risk. I can't. You can, Marcus interrupted. And you will, because right now you need a place to hide and figure out your next move. And I'm offering you one. Elena looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. Okay. Thank you. Marcus gave Dre the address. They drove in silence through Chicago's late-night streets, past closed storefronts and bars spilling light and noise onto sidewalks, past bus stops where night shift workers waited in the cold. Marcus watched the city slide past and wondered what the hell he'd just gotten himself into. His apartment was in Pilsen, in a building that had seen better decades. Dre pulled up outside, left the engine running while they got out. You good? Dre asked Marcus through the window. Yeah, thanks for the ride. You need anything, you call me. Doesn't matter when. I know, thanks, man. Dre drove off, taillights disappearing into the night. Marcus led Elena to the building's entrance, unlocked the door that should have required a buzzer, but had been broken for 6 months. They climbed 3 flights of stairs. The elevator was broken too, and Marcus unlocked his apartment. He'd left that morning expecting to come back to the same mess he'd left. Ava's backpack by the door, dishes in the sink, the couch that was slowly dying, one spring at a time. But seeing it through Elena's eyes made him acutely aware of how small it was, how worn, the water stain on the ceiling, the radiator that clanked, the walls that were thin enough to hear the neighbor's television. It's not much, he said. It's safe, Elena replied. That's all that matters right now. She moved to the window, looked out at the street below. Marcus could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she kept her phone in her hand like a lifeline. What now? He asked. Elena was quiet for a moment. Then she turned to face him. Now I figure out who wants me dead, and why. Elena stood at the window for 3 full minutes without moving. Marcus had seen that kind of stillness before, the frozen moment when your brain was trying to process something too big to fit inside one thought. He'd felt it himself when Ava's mother left, when the eviction notice appeared on their door, when the doctor said his father had 6 months, maybe less. You should sit down, he said finally. She turned, seemed to remember where she was. Right, yes. But she didn't sit. Instead, she pulled out her phone, stared at the screen like it might contain answers, then set it face down on the kitchen counter. If I turn this on, they can track me. They? Whoever hired James, whoever's trying to kill me. She said it matter-of-factly, like she was discussing quarterly earnings, but her hands were shaking again. Marcus moved to the kitchen, 3 steps in the cramped space, and filled a glass with water from the tap. The pipes groaned. He handed it to her. When's the last time you ate? Elena blinked. I don't. The risotto. I didn't finish it. That was 3 hours ago. Marcus opened the refrigerator, cataloged its pathetic contents. Eggs, half a loaf of bread, some cheese that was probably still good, Ava's fruit cups. I can make eggs, or toast, or eggs on toast, which is basically the extent of my culinary skills. You don't have to, you need to eat. Your brain needs fuel if you're going to figure this out. He pulled out the eggs, found a pan. Scrambled, okay? Elena watched him crack eggs into a bowl, whisk them with a fork. Why are you doing this? Making eggs? Because you're hungry. No, all of this. Helping me. You could have just let it happen. Minded your own business, gone home to your daughter. Marcus poured the eggs into the heated pan, pushed them around with a spatula. The familiar motion was calming. You really want to know? Yes. When I was 17, I watched a guy get jumped outside a liquor store. 3 guys, baseball bats, the whole thing. I was with 2 friends. We saw it happening, and we just kept walking. Told ourselves it wasn't our problem, that getting involved would just get us hurt too. He flipped the eggs, watched them cook. Kid died. Turned out he was 16. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong colors. And I just walked past. The apartment was quiet except for the hiss of eggs cooking and the radiator's persistent clank. You were a kid yourself, Elena said. Yeah, but I still think about it. Wonder if 3 more people yelling for help, making noise, being witnesses. Maybe those guys would have run. Maybe he'd be alive. Marcus slid the eggs onto a plate, handed it to her with a fork. So, when I see something wrong, I don't walk past anymore. Can't. Elena took the plate, stared at the eggs like she'd forgotten what food was supposed to do. Then she took a bite. These are good. They're eggs. I haven't had scrambled eggs in years. My chef does these elaborate frittatas with Gruyere and truffle oil. This is better. Marcus pulled out a chair at the small kitchen table, gestured for her to sit. This time she did. He sat across from her, watched her eat. Tell me about your company, he said. What do you do? I run Voss Dynamics. We manufacture specialized components for medical devices. Surgical robotics, imaging equipment, that kind of thing. It's not glamorous, but it's necessary. Hospitals need what we make. How big? 1,200 employees. Revenue last year was just over 300 million. Marcus whistled. That's a lot of people depending on you. It is. Elena set down her fork, which is why someone wanting me dead doesn't make sense. If I die, the company doesn't benefit. It gets thrown into chaos. Stock prices tank. Contracts get delayed. Nobody wins. Unless someone wants exactly that. Chaos. Elena went still. A hostile takeover. I don't know what that is. It's when another company tries to buy you out, but you don't want to sell. If they can drive down your stock price, create instability, suddenly the acquisition becomes more feasible, more attractive to shareholders. She stood abruptly, started pacing. We've had offers, 3 in the last year. I turned them all down. Who from? MedTech Solutions was the most aggressive. They're one of our competitors, bigger than us but not by much. Their CEO, Richard Lansing, made it clear he didn't like hearing no. Elena's phone sat on the counter, dark and silent. But murder? That's insane. There are legal ways to force a sale. You don't just kill the competition. Maybe the legal ways weren't working fast enough. Elena stopped pacing. I need to make a call. I need to contact my lawyer, my board, my head of security. The one who recommended James? That stopped her. Thomas Garrett. He's been with me for 8 years. I trust him completely. You trusted James completely too. The words landed hard. Elena's face went through several expressions at once. Denial, anger, fear, and finally something that looked like exhaustion. I don't know who to trust, she said quietly. So don't trust anyone. Not yet. Not until we know more. We? Elena looked at him. Marcus, you've done more than enough. You should distance yourself from this. If they find out you helped me, they already know I helped you. James saw me. Best case scenario, he thinks I was just doing my job. Worst case, he knows I warned you. Marcus leaned back in his chair, felt it creak. Either way, I'm already in this. Then we need to get you out. Take your daughter, Leave town for a while. I'll pay for it. I'll pay for everything. I'm not running. Marcus. I'm not running, he repeated, harder this time. I've spent my whole life running. Ran from the South Side, ran from a bad marriage, ran from every opportunity that felt too risky, too hard, too uncertain. I'm tired of running. They stared at each other across the kitchen table. Outside, a siren wailed past. The radiator clanked. Okay, Elena said finally. Then we need a plan. Marcus stood, found a notepad and pen in the junk drawer. The pen barely worked. The notepad was mostly phone numbers and grocery lists, but it was something. He sat back down, clicked the pen. Start from the beginning. Who benefits if you're dead? Elena thought for a moment. My brother, technically. He'd inherit my shares in the company. You said you don't talk. We don't. He wanted to sell Voss Dynamics 5 years ago when our father died. I refused. We've been estranged ever since. She paused. But Daniel's not a killer. He's a venture capitalist in Seattle. He's cold, he's calculating, but he's not violent. People can surprise you. Not like this. Besides, if Daniel wanted control of the company, he'd wait for me to fail naturally. He's patient. This is too messy for him. Marcus wrote down the brother's name anyway. Who else? My CFO, Lauren Park. She's been pushing for a sale to MedTech. Says it's the smart financial move. We fought about it. How bad? Bad enough that she threatened to quit. But she's been with the company for 6 years. She knows our systems, our contracts. If she wanted to hurt us, she has easier ways than murder. Marcus added Lauren Park to the list. Anyone else inside the company? My COO, David Chen, but he's loyal. Has been since my father hired him 20 years ago. Loyal people can be bought. Elena shook her head. Not David. His son had leukemia 3 years ago. We paid for the treatment, the experimental trials, everything. His son's in remission now. David would never... Everyone has a price, or a pressure point. Marcus tapped the pen against the notepad. What about outside the company? This MedTech outfit. Who runs it? Richard Lansing. He's intense, competitive, but he's also a public figure. Board meetings, shareholder calls, the works. Having me killed would be an insane risk. Unless he hired someone untraceable to do it. Marcus looked at the list. 3 suspects, maybe 4. Not much to work with. What about James? How is he paid? Through the company. Thomas handles all security personnel contracts. So if we find out who's been paying James on the side, we find who hired him. Elena nodded slowly. I'd need access to our financial systems, bank records, which means I'd need to go to the office. That's a terrible idea. I know, but it's the only way to get what we need. She checked her watch, a slim thing that probably cost more than Marcus's car. It's almost 1 a.m. The building will be empty except for security. I can get in through the executive entrance, access my terminal, download what I need. And if James is watching the building, he won't be. If he thinks I'm dead, he has no reason to stake out the office. And if he doesn't think I'm dead, she trailed off. If he doesn't, then we're already in trouble anyway. Marcus didn't like it. The whole thing felt rushed, desperate. But desperation was probably the right response when someone was trying to kill you. I'm coming with you, he said. Marcus, non-negotiable. You go, I go. Elena studied him for a long moment, then she nodded. We'll need a car, and I'll need different clothes. I can't walk into my office building looking like. She gestured at herself, the expensive suit, the designer coat, the shoes that were completely wrong for running. Marcus looked at her, then at his closet. I think we're about the same height, sort of. 10 minutes later, Elena Voss, CEO of a $300 million company, stood in Marcus's bathroom wearing his old Northwestern hoodie, jeans that were too loose in the waist and too short in the leg, and a pair of Ava's sneakers that were half a size too small. How do I look? She asked, emerging. Like you're going to a very sad college reunion. Despite everything, Elena smiled. Perfect. They called Dre again. He showed up 15 minutes later, didn't ask questions, just unlocked the doors and waited while they climbed in. Where to now? He asked. Elena gave him an address in the loop. Marcus recognized it, one of those glass towers that looked like it was assembled from money and ambition in equal parts. They drove through the empty streets. Chicago at 1 in the morning was a different city. Quieter, darker, full of people the daylight version pretended didn't exist. Homeless camps under overpasses, sex workers on certain corners, night shift workers waiting for buses. Marcus's city, the one he knew better than the tourist version with its Navy Pier and its Willis Tower and its architectural boat tours. "I grew up here," Elena said suddenly, looking out the window. South Loop, before it was gentrified. My father owned a machine shop, barely kept it running. We lived above it. You don't sound like you grew up in Chicago. Elocution lessons, speech coaching. When I started doing business with East Coast investors, I learned quickly that they heard my accent and saw someone they could underestimate. She paused. So I got rid of it. But it's still there, underneath. Yeah, it's still there. Dre pulled up a block from the office building. You want me to wait? Yeah, Marcus said. Keep the engine running. Man, you watch too many movies. Just do it. They got out. The wind had died down some, but the cold was still brutal. Elena led Marcus to a side entrance, used a key card to unlock it. No alarm sounded. They slipped inside. The building's lobby was all marble and glass, and the kind of aggressive modernism that was supposed to look innovative but mostly just looked expensive. Their footsteps echoed. Security cameras tracked their movement. Marcus counted 4 just in the entrance. The cameras, he started. I own the building. Well, the company does. Security footage gets reviewed if there's an incident, but otherwise it just loops and deletes. Elena moved toward the elevators. We'll be fine. They rode up to the 14th floor in Shumgans. The elevator music was something classical, something that sounded like it was trying very hard to be important. Marcus watched the numbers climb and thought about Ava, about whether Mrs. Chen had enough food for breakfast, about whether he'd ever see his daughter again, or if this was the stupid decision that finally caught up with him. The elevator opened onto a dark hallway. Motion sensors triggered lights as they walked, creating a path of fluorescence that followed them like a spotlight. Elena's office was at the end of the hall. She unlocked it, flipped on the lights. It was exactly what Marcus expected. Huge windows overlooking the city, expensive furniture, awards on the walls, photos from charity galas and ribbon-cutting ceremonies. The desk was pristine. No clutter, no mess, just a computer monitor and a single-frame photo. Marcus picked it up. It showed a younger Elena with an older man who had to be her father. They were standing in front of a machine shop, both covered in grease, both grinning. That was taken a week before he died, Elena said, sitting at her computer. Heart attack? He was at the shop working on a lathe. The doctor said he was probably dead before he hit the floor. I'm sorry. Don't be. He died doing what he loved. That's more than most people get. She typed in her password, waited for the system to boot up. He built Voss Dynamics from nothing, a machine shop in the South Loop, to a company worth hundreds of millions. And I swore I'd never sell it, never let it become just another acquisition, another line item in some conglomerate's portfolio. The computer finished loading. Elena opened a file directory, started clicking through folders. What are we looking for? Marcus asked. Anomalies? Unusual payments? Anything that doesn't fit the pattern. She opened a spreadsheet, scrolled. Numbers filled the screen, thousands of rows of financial data that meant nothing to Marcus. But Elena's face changed. She leaned closer to the monitor. What? Marcus asked. There's a payment here. Last week. $500,000 to a consulting firm I've never heard of. Clearwater Strategic Solutions. Could be legitimate, except it was authorized by Thomas Garrett, my head of security, and security doesn't authorize $500,000 consulting contracts. She clicked through more files. Here's another one. 2 weeks before that, same company, $750,000. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Thomas hired James. Thomas recommended James, but if he's also funneling money to a fake consulting firm, Elena pulled out her phone, stared at it. I need to call him, confront him. Absolutely not. If he's behind this, calling him just lets him know you're alive and asking questions. Then what do we do? We find proof, real proof, not just suspicious payments. Marcus looked around the office. Where would he keep records? Personal files? His office is 2 floors down, but I don't have access to his computer. You own the company. You have access to everything. Elena hesitated, then nodded. She stood, moved toward the door. They took the stairs down to 12, moved through another dark hallway. Thomas Garrett's office was smaller than Elena's, but still nice. The kind of nice that came from being important, but not quite in charge. Elena tried the door, locked. Do you have a key? Marcus asked. No, building security has master keys, but Marcus pulled a credit card from his wallet, slid it into the gap between the door and the frame. It was a trick he'd learned when he was 19 and stupid, breaking into his ex-girlfriend's apartment to get his stuff back after she'd thrown him out. The lock popped. They slipped inside. Thomas's office was neat but lived in. Photos of his family, a wife, 2 kids, military commendations on the wall, a desk covered in files and paperwork. Elena moved to the computer, tried to log in. Locked. I need his password. Marcus looked around. People write passwords down. Check the desk. They searched. Drawers full of office supplies, performance reviews, security protocols. Nothing that looked like a password. Then Marcus spotted it. A calendar on the desk with a series of appointments marked. And in the margin of last Tuesday, a note. CWS. Final payment. Confirm offshore account. CWS, Marcus said. Clearwater Strategic Solutions? Elena pulled out her phone, typed with shaking hands. I'm checking offshore accounts linked to the company. If Thomas set one up, she went pale. There. Cayman Islands. Account opened 4 months ago. $18 million transferred in increments. $18 million to kill you? No. $18 million to destroy the company. Killing me is just part of it. Elena sat heavily in Thomas's chair. The consulting payments, the offshore account, he's been embezzling, probably for months. And if I die, the company falls into chaos. The investigation gets buried in the confusion, and he walks away rich. But James, why would your bodyguard agree to kill you? Elena was quiet for a moment. Then she opened another file on her phone. James has a daughter, special needs. The care costs about $40,000 a month. I knew about it. I made sure his salary covered it. But if Thomas offered him more money, enough to set up a trust fund, make sure his daughter was taken care of forever. She looked up at Marcus. Desperate parents do desperate things. Marcus thought about Ava, about the calculations he made every day, rent versus food versus heat versus her future, about the corners he cut, the risks he took, the way he was constantly one emergency away from disaster. Yeah, and he said quietly, they do. Elena stood. We need to get this information to the police, to the board, to someone who can... The office door opened. Thomas Garrett stood in the doorway. He was older than Marcus expected. Late 50s, gray hair, the kind of posture that came from military service. He wore casual clothes, jeans, and a jacket, but his hand was in his pocket in a way that made Marcus think he was holding something. Elena, Thomas said calmly, I'm so glad you're alive. Elena didn't move. Thomas, I was worried when James called, said there'd been a complication at the restaurant, that you'd disappeared. His eyes flicked to Marcus. With the help of a waiter. Marcus's mouth went dry. I should have known you'd survive, Thomas continued. You're too smart, too careful, just like your father. He pulled his hand from his pocket. Gun. Small caliber, probably a .380. Enough to kill in a small space. I liked your father. I really did. He was a good man. Then why? Elena's voice was steady, but Marcus could see the fear in her eyes. Why betray everything he built? Because he built it on luck and timing, not skill. Because the company's worth more in pieces than it is whole. Because I've spent 8 years protecting you, watching you make decision after decision that left money on the table, and I'm tired of watching other people get rich while I take a salary. Thomas gestured with the gun. Step away from the desk, both of you. They moved. Marcus's mind raced through options. The office was small. No other exits. Thomas was armed, trained, probably prepared to shoot both of them and stage it as a murder-suicide or a break-in gone wrong. "Where's James?" Elena asked. "Waiting at your apartment. He'll be disappointed to find it empty." Thomas smiled, but it was cold, though he'll be pleased to know he gets to finish the job after all. "You're going to kill us." Elena said it like a fact, not a question. "I am. I'm sorry, Elena. I genuinely am. But you made this necessary when you refused to sell. When you refused to accept that your father's dream was outdated, inefficient. The offer from MedTech was generous. You should have taken it. You were working with Lansing. I was working for myself. Lansing's offer included a $20 million consulting contract for the person who facilitated the sale. I just had to create the right circumstances." He raised the gun, aimed it at Elena's chest. "This isn't personal." "It feels pretty personal," Marcus said. Thomas's eyes shifted to him. "You're collateral damage. Wrong place, wrong time. I'm sorry about that too." "Everyone's real sorry tonight," Marcus muttered. The gun moved to point at him instead. Marcus's entire body went cold. This was it. This was how it ended. In an office building in Chicago, shot by a man he'd never met, all because he'd decided to slip a note to a stranger. He thought about Ava, about how she'd find out, about who would tell her, about whether she'd understand that he'd been trying to do the right thing. Then Elena moved. She grabbed a heavy glass award from Thomas's desk, something about security excellence, and threw it. Not at Thomas. At the window. The glass exploded outward. The sound was enormous, a crack like thunder that echoed through the office. Thomas spun, instinct pulling him toward the noise, and in that half second Elena was on him. She wasn't graceful about it, she wasn't trained, but she was desperate and angry and done being afraid. They went down hard. The gun fired, deafening in the small space, the bullet going somewhere. Marcus didn't wait to see where. He lunged forward, grabbed Thomas's wrist, slammed it against the floor until the gun came loose. Thomas was stronger, trained, but there were two of them. Marcus got an arm around his throat, held on while Elena scrambled for the gun. "Don't!" Thomas gasped. "Don't make this worse. You can't prove anything. It's just financial records. Circumstantial." "Then I guess we'll let a jury decide, Bosettum," Elena said. She had the gun now, held it with both hands, pointed at Thomas's chest. Marcus felt Thomas go limp underneath him. Surrender. He eased back, keeping his weight on the older man's chest. "Call the police," Elena said. Her voice was shaking now, the adrenaline hitting. "Call them now." Marcus pulled out his phone, dialed 911. His hands were shaking too. The operator answered. 911. "What's your emergency?" "We need police. Voss Dynamics building, 14th floor. We've just stopped an attempted murder." The operator started asking questions. Marcus answered them mechanically, his brain still trying to catch up with what had just happened. Elena kept the gun trained on Thomas. She wasn't crying, wasn't breaking down, but Marcus could see the cracks forming, the way her jaw was clenched, the way her breathing was too fast. They waited. Thomas didn't speak. The broken window let in cold air and the sounds of the city below. "Thank you," Elena said quietly. Marcus looked at her. "For what?" "For helping me. For risking everything. For—" She trailed off, seemed to reconsider. "Just thank you." "You're welcome." They heard sirens in the distance, getting closer. The police arrived in waves. First 2 patrol officers, hands on their weapons, eyes scanning for threats. Then detectives. Then more detectives. Then people in suits who didn't identify themselves but radiated the kind of authority that made everyone else stand a little straighter. Marcus sat in a conference room on the 15th floor, gave his statement for the 3rd time to a detective who looked like she'd been pulled from her bed and wasn't happy about it. Her name was Rodriguez, and she had the weary patience of someone who'd heard every lie and half-truth Chicago had to offer. "So you're a waiter," she said, not looking up from her notepad. "Yes. At Aurelius." "Yes." "And you just happened to notice that Ms. Voss's bodyguard was planning to kill her." "I noticed something was off. The way he moved. The way he was looking at her." Rodriguez finally looked up. "You former military. Police? Security?" "No." But you can spot a threat that a trained bodyguard's colleagues couldn't see. Marcus felt the skepticism like a weight. I grew up on the South Side. You learn to read people or you don't survive. Uh-huh. Rodriguez made a note. And then you decided to warn a complete stranger. Risk your job. Get involved in something that could have gotten you killed. Yeah. Why? It was the same question Elena had asked. Marcus still didn't have a better answer. Because it was the right thing to do. Rodriguez studied him for a long moment. Then she closed her notepad. Your story matches Ms. Voss's, and we've got Thomas Garrett in custody, along with enough financial evidence to put him away for a long time. So congratulations, Mr. Lane, you're a hero. The words sat wrong. Marcus didn't feel like a hero. He felt tired and confused and worried about Ava and whether this was going to blow back on them somehow. Can I go? He asked. Soon. We need to process some paperwork, get your contact information in case we have follow-up questions. Rodriguez stood. But, yeah, you're not under arrest or anything. You did good tonight. She left. Marcus sat alone in the conference room, watching the sky outside start to lighten. Dawn was coming. He'd been awake for nearly 24 hours. His phone buzzed, a text from Ava. Mrs. Chen is making pancakes. Where are you? He typed back, long story, be home soon, save me some pancakes. The door opened. Elena walked in, looking as exhausted as Marcus felt. She'd changed back into her own clothes at some point, but they were rumpled now and her hair had escaped its severe knot. They're letting you go, she said. Yeah. You? I'm free to leave. They have Thomas. They have the evidence. The rest is just cleanup. She sat across from him. James turned himself in an hour ago. Once he heard Thomas was arrested, he knew it was over. He's cooperating, giving them everything. His daughter, Marcus said. Is she going to be okay? Elena nodded. I'm making sure of it, setting up a trust fund, making sure her medical care continues. None of this is her fault. That's generous, considering he was going to kill you. He was desperate. Desperate people make terrible choices. She paused. I should know. I made you part of this. Put you and your daughter at risk because I was too scared to handle it alone. I chose to help. You shouldn't have had to choose. You should have just gone home, lived your life, forgotten about the crazy woman at table 3. Elena pulled out her phone, typed something, then showed him the screen. I'm transferring $200,000 into your account. It's not enough for what you did, but it's something. Marcus stared at the number. 200,000. That was rent for 3 years. That was Ava's college fund. That was security, stability, everything he'd been working toward. I can't accept that, he heard himself say. Yes, you can. Elena, Marcus, you saved my life. You lost a night's wages, you put yourself in danger, and you did it without expecting anything in return. The least I can do is make sure you're compensated. It's too much. It's nothing compared to what you did. She set the phone down. Please, let me do this. Let me help you the way you helped me. Marcus thought about Ava, about the way she tried to hide her worry when bills came, about the laptop he'd bought refurbished, about the dance classes she'd quit last year because she said she was over it, when really she just knew they couldn't afford them. Okay, he said quietly. Thank you. Elena smiled, and it was the first real smile he'd seen from her. You're welcome. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, the sun was climbing, turning the sky pink and orange over Lake Michigan. What happens now? Marcus asked. Now I go back to running my company, except half my executive team was either involved in the embezzlement or turned a blind eye to it. So I get to rebuild everything while dealing with a media circus and a stock price that's probably tanking as we speak. She rubbed her eyes. It's going to be a nightmare. You'll handle it. How do you know? Because you threw a glass award at a window and tackled an armed man. If you can do that, you can handle some bad press and a few difficult board meetings. Elena laughed, surprised. When you put it that way, it sounds almost manageable. It won't be, but you'll do it anyway. The door opened again. Rodriguez stuck her head in. Ms. Voss, there's a reporter from the Tribune downstairs. Word's out about the arrest. You want to make a statement? Elena's expression shifted, became the CEO mask Marcus had seen at the restaurant. Professional, controlled. Tell them I'll make a statement from my office later today. No comment until then. Rodriguez nodded and disappeared. Elena stood. I should go. Deal with the aftermath. She looked at Marcus. Will I see you again? It was a strange question. They'd spent one night together, survived a murder attempt, stopped an embezzlement scheme. But they were still strangers in the ways that mattered. Different worlds, different lives. I don't know, Marcus said honestly. Right. Well, Elena held out her hand. Thank you, Marcus Lane, for everything. Marcus shook her hand. Her grip was firm, steady. Good luck, Elena Voss. She left. Marcus sat alone in the conference room for another 20 minutes before Rodriguez came back with release paperwork. He signed everything, took his copies, and walked out of the building into a Chicago morning that felt too normal for everything that had happened. Dre was still waiting, asleep in the Lincoln with the engine running. Marcus knocked on the window. Dre jerked awake, looked around in confusion, then saw Marcus and unlocked the doors. Man, you've been in there for hours. What the hell happened? I'll tell you while you drive. I need to get home. The ride back to Pilsen felt surreal. The city was waking up, buses running, people heading to work, the whole machine of daily life grinding forward. Marcus watched it all and felt disconnected, like he was seeing it through glass. Dre kept asking questions. Marcus answered some, deflected others. By the time they pulled up outside his building, Dre was shaking his head. You're insane, you know that, right? You could have been killed. Yeah. But you did it anyway. Yeah. Dre looked at him for a long moment. I don't know if that makes you brave or stupid. Probably both. Marcus opened the door. Thanks for everything, man. I owe you. Damn right you do. I'm adding getaway driver to my resume. Marcus climbed the 3 flights to his apartment, unlocked the door, stepped inside. The place looked exactly the same as when he'd left it, but it felt different, smaller somehow. Or maybe he was just different. He showered, changed into clean clothes, then headed upstairs to Mrs. Chen's apartment. She answered the door with Ava right behind her, and Ava immediately wrapped her arms around him. Where were you? She demanded, her voice muffled against his chest. You said you'd be home. You promised. I know. I'm sorry. There was a situation at work. Ava pulled back, looked up at him with those eyes that saw too much. What kind of situation? The kind that's over now. Everything's fine. Mrs. Chen, a tiny woman in her 70s who'd lived in the building for 40 years, handed him a plate covered in foil. Pancakes. I made extra. Thank you, Mrs. Chen, really, for watching her for... She's a good girl, no trouble. Mrs. Chen smiled. But you look terrible. Go sleep. Marcus took Ava back downstairs. She peppered him with questions the whole way. Where had he been? What had happened? Why did he look so tired? He deflected, promised explanations later, got her settled on the couch with her homework. Then his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Marcus Lane? A woman's voice. Professional. Clipped. Yeah. This is Jennifer Walsh from Channel 7 News. I'm doing a story on last night's incident at Voss Dynamics, and I understand you were instrumental in preventing what could have been a tragedy. I'd love to get your perspective for our evening broadcast. Marcus's stomach dropped. I don't have anything to say. Just a few questions. Our viewers would love to hear from the hero who... He hung up. The phone rang again immediately. Different number. He ignored it. Ava looked up from her homework. Who was that? Wrong number. But over the next hour, his phone rang 7 more times. Each time a different reporter, a different news outlet, all asking the same questions. By noon, there was a reporter from the Tribune standing outside his building. Marcus watched from the window as the guy talked to neighbors, knocked on doors. Dad, what's going on? Ava asked. Marcus sat next to her on the couch. Remember how I said there was a situation at work? Yeah. It was kind of a big situation, and now people want to talk to me about it, reporters and stuff. Ava's eyes went wide. What did you do? I helped someone. That's all. but I guess it's newsworthy or something. Is it bad? Are you in trouble? No, baby, I'm not in trouble. It's just complicated. His phone rang again. This time it was Aurelius, the manager, Victor. Marcus answered. Victor. Marcus, I've had 6 reporters call the restaurant asking about you. What the hell happened last night? I helped a customer. Things got out of hand. Out of hand? The Tribune is calling you a hero. They're saying you stopped a murder. Something like that. Victor was quiet for a moment. Are you okay? Do you need time off? The question surprised him. Victor wasn't known for his compassion. I'm fine. I'll be in for my shift tonight. About that. I think you should take a few days, let this blow over. The last thing we need is reporters camping out at the restaurant. Marcus understood what Victor wasn't saying. He was being benched, kept away until the media attention died down. How long? Marcus asked. A week, maybe 2. I'll still pay you for your scheduled shifts. Just stay home until this quiets down. It wasn't a request. Marcus agreed and hung up. Ava was staring at him. You stopped a murder? It's complicated. That's what you keep saying. But Dad, if you stopped someone from being killed, that's not complicated. That's amazing. Marcus looked at his daughter, 14 years old, too smart for her own good, watching him with a mix of pride and worry that made his chest tight. It was the right thing to do, he said. That's all. But even as he said it, he wondered if it was true. The right thing had put them in the spotlight. The right thing had reporters knocking on their door. The right thing had consequences he hadn't thought through. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. This is Lauren Park, Elena's CFO. We need to talk. Can you come to the office tomorrow, 2 p.m.? Marcus stared at the message. He'd assumed his involvement with Voss Dynamics was over. He'd done his part, given his statement, accepted Elena's money, but apparently they weren't done with him yet. He texted back, Why? The response came quickly. Elena wants to see you. It's important. Marcus didn't respond. He set the phone down, tried to focus on the fact that Ava was safe, that the money Elena had transferred would change their lives, that everything had worked out. But the unease wouldn't leave. That night, the story broke. Channel 7 ran it as their lead. Marcus watched himself described as a quick-thinking waiter who noticed suspicious behavior and potentially saved a prominent businesswoman's life. They showed footage of the Voss Dynamics building, of Thomas Garrett being led away in handcuffs, of Elena giving a brief statement about the ongoing investigation. Ava watched with him, her eyes glued to the screen. That's the woman you helped? Yeah. She's rich. Yeah. And you just saw something was wrong and helped her? Yeah. Ava looked at him. Most people wouldn't have done that. Maybe. Dad, you're a good person. You know that, right? Marcus pulled her close, kissed the top of her head. I'm trying, baby. The next day, Marcus took the train downtown. He wore his nicest clothes, khakis and a button-down that was only slightly wrinkled, and felt completely out of place the moment he walked into the Voss Dynamics building. The lobby was full of people in expensive suits having urgent conversations. Marcus approached the security desk, gave his name. The guard made a call, then handed him a visitor's badge. 14th floor, the guard said. Ms. Voss is expecting you. The elevator ride up felt longer than it had 2 nights ago. This time, there was no adrenaline, no fear, just the awkward reality of walking back into a world that wasn't his. Lauren Park met him when the elevator doors opened. She was younger than he expected, maybe 35, with sharp features and sharper eyes. She wore a suit that probably cost more than Marcus's monthly rent. Mr. Lane, thank you for coming. Pose tu patate. She didn't offer to shake hands. Follow me. She led him through the office, past cubicles where people pretended not to stare, past conference rooms where serious meetings were happening, past the floor-to-ceiling windows that showed Chicago spread out below like a game board. Elena's office looked different in daylight, less ominous, just an office. Elena stood when they entered. She'd changed since the last time Marcus had seen her, not just her clothes, but something in her bearing. She looked harder somehow, more armored. Marcus, thank you for coming. Your CFO said it was important. It is. Please sit. Marcus sat. Lauren remained standing, which made him feel like he was being evaluated. Elena opened a folder on her desk. We've been doing damage control since the arrest. The board is nervous, investors are asking questions, and our stock price has dropped 12%. But the bigger issue is trust. Half my executive team is either gone or under investigation. I need to rebuild, and I need to do it quickly. Okay, Marcus said, not sure where this was going. I'm offering you a job. The words hung in the air. Marcus blinked. What? A job, here, at Voss Dynamics. I'm a waiter. You're someone who saw a threat when trained professionals missed it. You're someone who took a risk to help a stranger. You're someone I can trust, which is more valuable to me right now than an MBA from Harvard. Marcus looked at Lauren, who was watching him with an expression he couldn't read, then back at Elena. What kind of job? Executive assistant to start. You'd work directly with me, learn the business. Eventually, maybe move into operations or security. The pay would be $90,000 a year to start, with full benefits and a performance bonus structure. $90,000. Marcus's brain stuttered trying to process the number. That was 3 times what he made waiting tables. That was stability. That was Ava's college fund. That was everything he'd been working toward. I don't have any experience, he said. You have instincts. You have judgment. Everything else can be taught. Elena leaned forward. I need people around me who aren't afraid to speak up when something's wrong, who won't just tell me what I want to hear. You proved you're that kind of person. Elena, I barely finished high school. I don't know anything about manufacturing or medical devices or corporate. Neither did I when I started. My father taught me on the job. I can do the same for you. Marcus looked at his hands. They were waiter hands, scarred from hot plates, calloused from carrying trays, marked by years of service work. Can I think about it? He asked. Elena's expression shifted, something like disappointment crossing her face before she covered it. Of course. Take as long as you need. Lauren cleared her throat. Ms. Voss has another meeting in 10 minutes. Marcus stood. Thank you for the offer. I need to figure some things out. I understand. Elena stood too, walked him to the door. Marcus, I meant what I said. You have good instincts. Don't waste them on a job that doesn't value them. He left, rode the elevator down in silence, walked out of the building into the Chicago afternoon feeling more confused than when he'd arrived. The job offer should have been an easy decision. More money, better future, a chance to do something different with his life. But it felt wrong somehow, like he'd be pretending to be someone he wasn't. He took the train back to Pilsen, picked up Ava from school, made her dinner. She talked about her day, a test in history, drama with her friends, a video she'd seen online. Normal things. Safe things. That night, after Ava went to bed, Marcus sat at the kitchen table with a beer he didn't really want and thought about choices. About the moment in the restaurant when he'd decided to slip Elena that note. About how one decision had led to another, until he was sitting here with a job offer he didn't know how to answer. His phone buzzed. A text from Elena. I pushed too hard today. I'm sorry. The offer stands, but no pressure. Whatever you decide, you helped me when you didn't have to, and I won't forget that. Marcus typed back. I just need time. Her response came immediately. Take all the time you need. But time didn't make the decision easier. Over the next 3 days, Marcus went back and forth. Talked to Dre, who told him he'd be crazy not to take it. Talked to Mrs. Chen, who said money wasn't everything. Talked to Ava, who got excited about the idea of moving to a better neighborhood, a better school. On the 4th day, Marcus's phone rang. Victor from Aurelius. Marcus, you can come back to work tomorrow if you want. The media attentions died down. Thanks. I'll be there. Good. We've missed you. You're one of our best. Marcus hung up and realized that was part of the problem. He was good at being a waiter. He knew how to read a room, how to anticipate needs, how to move through chaos with calm efficiency. It was comfortable. Safe. Taking Elena's offer meant leaving that safety, meant trying to be something he'd never been, meant risking failure in front of people who already doubted he belonged. But it also meant giving Ava chances he'd never had. Meant not spending the rest of his life carrying plates and wondering what if. That night, Marcus made his decision. He texted Elena, "I'll take the job. When do I start?" Her response was immediate. Monday, 8 a.m. Welcome aboard. Marcus stared at the message for a long time. Then he went to Ava's room, sat on the edge of her bed. She was still awake, reading on her phone. "What's up?" "I took the job, the one at that company." Ava sat up. "Really? Really?" She threw her arms around him. "Dad, that's amazing. I'm so proud of you." Marcus held his daughter and hoped he hadn't just made the biggest mistake of his life. Monday morning hit Marcus like cold water. He stood outside the Voss Dynamics building at 7:45, wearing a suit he'd bought at a discount store over the weekend. It fit wrong, too tight in the shoulders, too loose in the waist. But it was the best he could afford, even with Elena's money sitting in his bank account. That money felt untouchable somehow, like spending it would make everything too real. The lobby was already crowded with people who looked like they belonged there. Marcus felt every eye on him as he approached security, felt the weight of being the outsider who'd stumbled into a world he didn't understand. The guard checked his ID, made a call, handed him a permanent badge. 14th floor, same as before. Ms. Park will meet you. The elevator was packed with people having conversations about quarterly reports and supply chain issues and board meetings. Marcus stayed quiet, tried to make himself smaller, wished he'd just stayed at Aurelius where at least he knew what he was doing. Lauren Park was waiting when the doors opened. She looked him over with an expression that might have been disapproval or might have just been her face. "You're early," she said. "Habit. Good habit. Come with me." She walked fast, talking the whole time. "You'll have a desk outside Elena's office. Your primary responsibility is managing her calendar, screening calls, coordinating meetings. You'll also attend all executive meetings, take notes, handle follow-up tasks. Elena wants you to learn the business, so you'll be sitting in on everything." "Everything?" "Everything. Board meetings, investor calls, negotiations, all of it." Lauren stopped outside a desk that had a computer, a phone, and a neat stack of files. "This is you. Computer is already set up with your login. Password's on this sticky note. Change it today. Files are briefing materials for this week's meetings. Read them." Marcus looked at the files. There had to be a dozen of them, each labeled with dates and topics he didn't recognize. "I'm supposed to read all of these?" "By Wednesday. Elena's schedule is on the shared calendar. Conference call starts at 9. You'll need to dial in." Lauren checked her watch. "I have a meeting. Questions?" "About 1,000. But Marcus just shook his head. Lauren left. Marcus sat at his desk, logged into the computer, opened the first file. It was full of numbers and technical terms and acronyms he didn't understand. He read the same paragraph 3 times and still couldn't make sense of it. This was a mistake. He'd known it was a mistake, but sitting here trying to decode corporate jargon while people who actually knew what they were doing walked past. That made it real. "Marcus?" He looked up. Elena stood in her office doorway, coffee in hand, looking like she'd been awake for hours. "How are you settling in?" "I have no idea what I'm doing." Elena smiled. "Good. That means you're paying attention." She gestured him into her office. "Come on. We've got 20 minutes before the call. I'll walk you through it." Marcus followed her inside. She pulled up a chair next to her desk, opened a file on her computer. "First rule? Don't try to understand everything at once. You'll make yourself crazy." She scrolled through a spreadsheet. "This is our Q1 performance data. Revenue, expenses, profit margins. The board wants to know why we missed our targets by 3%. Did you miss because of Thomas? The embezzlement? Partly, but also because one of our suppliers raised prices and we didn't pass the cost to customers fast enough. And because we had a production delay on a new surgical robot component." She looked at him. "Business is messy. There's never just one reason things go wrong. So what do I need to know for the call? Just listen. Take notes on anything that sounds important. If you have questions, write them down and we'll go over them after." Elena closed the file. "Marcus, you're not expected to be an expert on day one. You're here because you see things other people miss. Trust that." The conference call was worse than Marcus expected. 12 voices talking over each other, arguing about numbers and projections and strategies. Marcus took notes, understood maybe 40% of it, and felt increasingly certain he was going to fail spectacularly. But Elena kept glancing at him, kept checking if he was following along. And whenever things got especially confusing, she'd pause the conversation and ask for clarification. Not for herself, Marcus realized, but for him. After the call ended, she pulled him back into her office. "Thoughts?" she asked. "Your CFO thinks you should cut production costs by outsourcing to China. Your COO thinks that'll hurt quality, and nobody wants to say out loud that you're being pressured to sell the company." Elena went very still. Where did you get that last part? The way they kept dancing around it, talking about strategic options and maximizing shareholder value. That's code, right? For selling. Yes, it is. Elena sat back in her chair. The board's been pushing for a sale ever since the scandal. They think it's too risky to stay independent, that we should take MedTech's offer and walk away. What do you think? I think my father built this company from nothing, and I'm not going to let some corporate raiders tear it apart for scrap metal. Her voice was hard. But I'm 1 vote against 12. If I can't turn things around fast, prove we're stable, profitable, worth keeping independent, they'll force the sale anyway. How much time do you have? 3 months, maybe 4. Elena looked out the window at Chicago spread below them. I need to clean house, rebuild trust, show we can execute without the people who've been running things for the last decade. And I need to do it while the media is watching every move and our competitors are circling like sharks. Marcus thought about that, about the impossibility of it, about the fact that Elena was trying to save a company while most people would have just taken the money and run. Why fight it? Why, he asked. Why not just sell? Elena was quiet for a long moment. You know how you said you stopped walking past things that were wrong? Yeah. This company employs 1,200 people, good people, assembly line workers, engineers, administrative staff. If we sell to MedTech, they'll gut us. Keep the intellectual property, the customer contracts, maybe 50 key employees, everyone else gets laid off. She met his eyes. I can't walk past that, even if it'd be easier. Marcus understood. It wasn't about the money or the prestige, it was about the principle, about standing up when it would be easier to fold. Okay, he said. So what do we do? We? Elena raised an eyebrow. You hired me to help, so I'm asking, what do we do? Elena studied him for a moment, then pulled up a document on her computer. We start by fixing what's broken. I'm bringing in a new CFO, new head of security, new COO, people I can trust. But that creates its own problems. Institutional knowledge walks out the door with the people I'm firing. What about the people who are left, the ones who didn't know what Thomas was doing? What about them? Are they loyal? I don't know. That's the problem. Marcus thought about the waiters at Aurelius, about the way they'd close ranks when Victor made a bad decision, the way information flowed through unofficial channels, the way everyone knew who to trust and who to avoid. You need to talk to them, he said, not in a meeting, not through email. Actually talk to them. Ask what they need, what's broken, what they're afraid of. Elena looked skeptical. I have 1,200 employees, Marcus. I can't personally talk to all of them. No, but you can talk to the ones who matter, the team leads, the shift supervisors, the people who actually know how things work day to day. He leaned forward. When Victor makes a change at the restaurant, the waiters don't hear it from him. They hear it from whoever's working the shift. That person becomes the filter. If you want to know what's really happening in your company, find those filters. Elena was quiet, thinking. Then she nodded. Okay, set it up. What? You're right. I need to hear from people on the ground. So set up meetings. Manufacturing floor supervisors, department heads, whoever you think I should talk to. You have 3 days. Elena, I don't even know who these people are. So figure it out. That's why I hired you. She said it like it was simple, like Marcus hadn't spent his entire life on the other side of this equation, being managed, not managing, like he had any idea how to coordinate meetings for a CEO, but he nodded anyway. Okay, I'll figure it out. The next 3 days were the hardest Marcus had worked in his life. He spent hours on the phone, tracking down supervisors and team leads. He read organizational charts until his eyes crossed. He learned names and departments and who reported to whom. And slowly, he started to see the structure underneath. The company wasn't just a building full of people. It was a network of relationships, dependencies, unspoken hierarchies. Just like a restaurant, but bigger. By Wednesday, he'd scheduled 15 meetings spread across 2 weeks. Shop floor supervisors from manufacturing, quality control leads, engineering team heads, people who'd been with the company for decades, and people who'd just started. Elena looked at the calendar he'd built and nodded. Good work. Some of them didn't want to meet, said they were too busy. Did you convince them? I told them the CEO personally requested their input on the company's future. That seemed to work. Elena smiled. You're learning. The first meeting was with a manufacturing supervisor named Carl Donovan. 50-something, thick Chicago accent, hands scarred from 30 years working machines. He sat across from Elena in the conference room, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Mr. Donovan, Elena started, thank you for taking the time to meet with me. You're the boss, not like I had a choice. Fair enough. Elena didn't flinch. I wanted to ask about the production delays we've been experiencing, the surgical robot components. Your team handles that assembly line, correct? Yeah. Can you tell me what's causing the delays? Carl looked at Elena, then at Marcus, then back at Elena. You really want to know? I do. The machinery's old. Half of it should have been replaced 5 years ago. We're running equipment past its service life, and it breaks down. When it breaks, we wait for parts, because your procurement department won't approve overnight shipping, so a 4-hour fix becomes a 4-day delay. Why hasn't anyone reported this? Carl laughed, but there was no humor in it. We report it every month. Maintenance requests, equipment replacement proposals, all of it. Gets reviewed by operations, gets marked non-essential, gets shelved. Been happening for 3 years. Elena's expression didn't change, but Marcus saw her fingers tighten on her pen. I wasn't aware. Because nobody wanted to tell you equipment costs money. Easier to blame the workers for being slow. The meeting continued. Carl laid out problem after problem, equipment failures, safety concerns, quality control issues that were being swept under the rug. Things Thomas and the old executive team had apparently decided weren't worth bothering Elena about. When Carl left, Elena sat in silence for a full minute. Did you know about any of that? Marcus asked. No. I knew we had production issues, but I thought it was process inefficiency, not literal equipment failure. She pulled up a file on her laptop. 3 years of maintenance requests, all denied by David Chen. Your loyal COO. Apparently not as loyal as I thought. Elena closed the laptop. Get David in here. Now. Marcus made the call. 10 minutes later, David Chen walked into the conference room. He was older than Elena, maybe 60, with wire-rimmed glasses and the calm demeanor of someone who'd been managing crises for decades. Elena, you wanted to see me? Sit down, David. He sat. Elena slid a printed maintenance request across the table. Why was this denied? David looked at it. Equipment replacement. We didn't have budget allocation for capital expenditures that quarter. This is marked urgent, safety concern. Everything's marked urgent. If we approved every request that came through, we'd be spending millions on equipment that still has useful life. Elena pulled out another request, and another, and another. A stack of them, all denied, all marked urgent. Useful life, Elena repeated. Carl Donovan just told me we're running machines past their service life, that we're experiencing failures weekly, that we're delaying production because we won't pay for overnight parts. David's calm cracked slightly. Carl Donovan is a line supervisor. He doesn't understand the full financial picture. Then explain it to me. Elena, we've been operating on thin margins for years. Every dollar spent on equipment is a dollar not going to R&D, to expansion, to investor dividends. I made the decisions I thought were best for the company's long-term health. By running our manufacturing operation into the ground, by keeping us profitable. David's voice rose. You want to know why the board's pushing for a sale? Because our margins are shrinking. Because our competitors are eating our lunch. Because we're hanging on by our fingernails, and everyone knows it except apparently you. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. Elena spoke quietly. Get out. Elena, get out of my office. You're suspended pending a full review of your decisions. HR will be in touch. David stood slowly. You're making a mistake. You fire everyone who's kept this company running while you played CEO, and you'll have nothing left. Then I'll rebuild with nothing. Get out! David left. Marcus waited until the door closed before speaking. That could have gone better. Elena laughed, short and bitter. That's an understatement. She put her head in her hands. He's right about one thing. If I fire everyone who's been covering up problems, I won't have anyone left to run the company. You'll have the people who've been trying to fix problems, like Carl. Carl's a line supervisor. He can't run operations. No, but he knows what's broken. That's a start. Elena looked up at him. You're very optimistic for someone who watched me just blow up at my COO. You didn't blow up. You held your ground. There's a difference. Over the next week, Marcus sat through 14 more meetings. Each one revealed more problems. Corners cut, reports falsified, warning signs ignored. The picture that emerged was of a company that had been rotting from the inside while everyone pretended everything was fine. Elena fired 3 more executives, suspended 2 others, started a full audit of every department, and the media loved it. Voss Dynamics in freefall, read the Tribune headline. CEO purges leadership team amid crisis, announced the Wall Street Journal. Stock price dropped another 8%. Marcus watched Elena handle call after call from angry board members, worried investors, reporters looking for drama. She never flinched, never backed down, just kept moving forward like she knew exactly what she was doing, even when Marcus was pretty sure she was making it up as she went. 2 weeks into his new job, Marcus stayed late helping Elena prepare for an emergency board meeting. It was past 10 when they finally finished, and the office was empty except for them. Go home, Elena said, rubbing her eyes. You've been here for 14 hours. So have you. I'm used to it. Marcus started packing up his notes. Can I ask you something? Sure. Do you ever think about just walking away, taking the sale, getting out before it gets worse? Elena was quiet for a moment. Every day. The honesty surprised him. But then I think about my father, she continued, about how he started with nothing, how he worked 70-hour weeks in that machine shop, how he bet everything on a dream that probably should have failed. And I think about just handing that to some corporation that'll strip it for parts. She looked at Marcus. I can't do it, even if it'd be smarter. Even if I'm destroying myself trying to save something that maybe can't be saved. Marcus understood that feeling. The stubborn refusal to quit even when quitting made sense. For what it's worth, he said, I think you're doing the right thing. Even though we're probably going to fail? Even though. Elena smiled, tired but genuine. Thanks, Marcus. They rode down the elevator together, walked out into the Chicago night. It was late April now, and the cold had finally broken. The air smelled like rain and possibility. Can I give you a ride? Elena asked. I have a car coming. I'm good. Train's faster this time of night. They stood on the sidewalk, neither quite ready to leave yet. How's your daughter? Elena asked. Good. Better. She's excited about maybe switching schools next year. Moving to a better neighborhood. Because of the money I gave you. Yeah. Elena nodded. I'm glad it's helping. It's changing everything, so thank you, again. A black car pulled up. Not a Lincoln like Dre's, something sleeker. The driver got out, opened the door for Elena. See you tomorrow? She asked. 8 a.m., like always. Elena got in the car. Marcus watched it pull away, then headed for the train. His phone buzzed. A text from Ava. Mrs. Chen made cookies. Saved you some. He texted back. On my way home. The train was mostly empty. Marcus sat by the window, watched Chicago slide past, thought about how much had changed in 3 weeks. New job, new life, new purpose beyond just surviving day to day. But underneath the change, he felt something else. Something that had been building since that first night at Aurelius when he'd slipped Elena that note. Connection. Not just professional courtesy or obligation, but actual connection. The kind that formed when two people went through something impossible and came out the other side still standing. He didn't know what to do with that feeling. Didn't know if it was appropriate or professional or even real. But it was there, persistent and undeniable. Marcus got off at his stop, walked the 3 blocks to his building. Mrs. Chen was waiting in the hallway with a plate of cookies wrapped in foil. "You work too late," she scolded. "I know. I'm sorry. Ava needs her father." "I know that too." Mrs. Chen studied him for a moment, then softened. "But she's proud of you. Tells me every day about her father, the businessman." Marcus took the cookies. "I'm not a businessman. I'm just trying to help." "Same thing," Mrs. Chen said, and went back to her apartment. Marcus let himself into his place. Ava was asleep on the couch, laptop open, chemistry homework spread around her. He closed the laptop carefully, covered her with a blanket. She stirred. "Dad?" "Yeah, baby. I'm home." "How was work?" "Long, complicated, good." Ava smiled without opening her eyes. "Good." Marcus sat on the floor next to the couch, watched his daughter sleep, and thought about the board meeting tomorrow, about the battles Elena was fighting, about the fact that he'd somehow become part of something bigger than himself. It was terrifying, but it was also the first time in years he'd felt like his life was moving forward instead of just treading water. His phone buzzed one more time, a text from Elena. "Thank you for tonight, for listening, for caring. It means more than you know." Marcus stared at the message for a long time before responding. Anytime. And he meant it. The emergency board meeting happened on a Tuesday morning in early May, and Marcus could feel the tension the moment he walked into the conference room. 12 board members sat around a table that probably cost more than his car, all of them wearing expressions that ranged from skeptical to openly hostile. Elena stood at the head of the table, flanked by the new CFO she'd brought in, a woman named Sarah Chen who'd left a VP position at a Fortune 500 company to join what everyone was calling a sinking ship. Marcus sat to the side with his laptop, ready to take notes, trying to be invisible. "Let's get started," said Gerald Whitmore, the board chairman. He was 70-something with silver hair and the bearing of someone who'd been rich his entire life. "Elena, you called this meeting. The floor is yours." Elena stood. She didn't have notes, didn't have a PowerPoint, just herself and the numbers she'd spent the last month fighting to understand. 3 weeks ago, I fired or suspended 5 members of my executive team. The board expressed concern. Several of you called to suggest I was acting rashly, that I was destabilizing the company during a crisis. She looked around the table. "You were right to be concerned, but you were wrong about the reason." Whitmore's expression didn't change. "Explain." "The executives I removed weren't just incompetent. They were actively concealing problems, equipment failures, safety violations, quality control issues that could have resulted in patient deaths." Elena pulled up a document on the screen behind her. "This is a maintenance request from 2023, marked urgent, denied by our former COO. 2 weeks later, that same equipment failed during production of a cardiac imaging component. The batch had to be scrapped. We lost $200,000 and a contract with Northwestern Memorial." She clicked through more slides, each one showing a request denied, a problem ignored, a decision made to prioritize short-term profits over long-term stability. "I didn't know about any of this," Elena continued, "because the people I trusted to run this company decided I didn't need to know. They were more interested in making the numbers look good than actually fixing what was broken." "And firing them fixes it how?" asked another board member, a woman named Patricia Odom. "You've created a leadership vacuum. Who's running operations now?" "I am, with help from people who actually understand what's happening on the ground." Elena gestured to Marcus. "Marcus Lane, my executive assistant, spent the last 3 weeks interviewing floor supervisors, department leads, quality control managers, people who've been trying to report problems for years and being ignored. We've compiled a complete assessment of what needs to be fixed." Patricia looked at Marcus like he was a stain on the carpet. "Your executive assistant, the waiter." The waiter who saved my life, yes, and who's shown better judgment in 3 weeks than my previous executive team showed in 3 years. The room went quiet. Marcus kept his eyes on his laptop, refusing to engage. Whitmore cleared his throat. All of this is very concerning, Elena, but it doesn't change the fundamental issue. Our stock price has dropped 22% since the scandal broke. We have an acquisition offer on the table from MedTech Solutions that values us at $400 million. That's generous, considering our current situation. It's a lowball offer, Sarah Chen interjected. MedTech knows we're in crisis. They're betting we'll panic and sell cheap. But our intellectual property alone is worth more than their offer. Only if we can execute, Patricia shot back, which we currently can't. We've missed deadlines, lost contracts, hemorrhaged customers. Why should we believe you can turn this around? Elena met her eyes. Because I know what this company is worth. Because I know what we can be if we stop trying to squeeze every dollar out of failing systems and actually invest in fixing them. Because I'm willing to fight for it. Fighting isn't a business plan. No. But this is... Elena pulled up another document, full equipment replacement schedule. $15 million over 18 months. Yes, it's expensive, but it'll reduce our production delays by 60% and our quality control failures by 80%. Those numbers are based on actual data from our manufacturing teams. She clicked through more slides. A restructured operations plan, new hiring proposals, partnerships with research hospitals, a roadmap for the next 2 years that was ambitious and risky and probably impossible. This requires capital we don't have, Whitmore said. It requires capital we're not willing to spend, Elena corrected. We have it. We're just choosing to hoard it instead of investing it. Because spending it could bankrupt us if your plan fails. And doing nothing will definitely bankrupt us, slowly, while we watch our competitors take our market share and our employees lose faith. Elena leaned forward. I'm asking for 6 months. Give me 6 months to prove this works. If the numbers don't improve, if we're not hitting our targets, then I'll step aside. Let you sell to MedTech or whoever else wants us. But give me the chance to fight. The board members exchanged glances, whispered conversations. Marcus could read the room. Half of them wanted to cut their losses, take the money, and run. The other half were undecided, waiting to see which way the wind blew. Whitmore spoke carefully. 6 months is a long time in a crisis. It's not enough time to turn around a company this size, but it's enough to show progress, to prove we're moving in the right direction. Elena's voice was steady, but Marcus could hear the exhaustion underneath. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to trust the people who've been doing the actual work while leadership ignored them. They know what needs to be fixed. Let me give them the resources to fix it. Patricia looked at the presentation still displayed on the screen. And if we say no, if we vote to accept MedTech's offer, then I'll resign, effective immediately. And you can explain to our 1,200 employees why their jobs are being eliminated so shareholders can get a payout. Elena sat down. Your choice. The silence that followed was heavy. Marcus kept typing notes, kept his head down, kept breathing. Finally, Whitmore spoke. We'll need to vote, but not today. This is too important to rush. He looked around the table. We'll reconvene in 1 week. Elena, I suggest you use that time to shore up support. You'll need more than passion to convince this board. The meeting ended. Board members filed out, still whispering among themselves. Marcus packed up his laptop, waited for Elena. She stood by the window staring out at Chicago below. Her shoulders were rigid, her hands clenched. How bad is it? Marcus asked quietly. Bad. I've got maybe 4 votes out of 12. I need 7 to block the sale. Can you get 3 more in a week? I don't know. Elena turned to face him. Whitmore's right. Passion isn't enough. I need results. Actual proof that we can execute. Then let's get you proof. Over the next 6 days, Marcus learned what it meant to work for someone who refused to quit. Elena was everywhere, on the manufacturing floor talking to workers, in meetings with potential clients, on calls with investors trying to calm their fears. She slept maybe 4 hours a night, ate meals at her desk, and pushed herself until Marcus worried she'd collapse. But she also listened. When Carl Donovan suggested a change to the production schedule that would reduce downtime, Elena implemented it immediately. When a quality control manager proposed a new testing protocol, Elena funded it. When engineers said they needed better equipment to meet deadlines, Elena found the budget. And slowly, things started to change. Production delays decreased, quality scores improved. A client who'd been threatening to leave renewed their contract. Marcus watched it happen from his desk outside Elena's office, fielding calls and managing schedules and learning more about business than he'd ever thought possible. But he also watched Elena wearing herself down, saw the cracks forming underneath the professional exterior. On Thursday night, 3 days before the board vote, Marcus found her in her office at 11 p.m., staring at spreadsheets with red-rimmed eyes. "You need to go home," he said. "I need to find 3 more votes." "You need to sleep. You're running on fumes." Elena didn't look up from her computer. "I'll sleep when this is over." Marcus walked into the office, closed the laptop. "No, you'll sleep now, because if you burn out before the vote, none of this matters." She finally looked at him. "Marcus, I'm serious. You've done everything you can. The numbers are there. The plan is solid. Either the board sees it or they don't. But killing yourself won't change their minds." Elena was quiet for a long moment. Then she slumped in her chair. "I'm scared." The admission surprised him. Elena didn't do vulnerable. She did strong, controlled, certain. "Of losing?" Marcus asked. "Of failing everyone who's counting on me. My employees, my father's legacy, you." She met his eyes. "You gave up a stable job to help me. Ava's counting on that income now. If the board forces the sale, if I have to resign, you're out of a job too." Marcus hadn't thought about that. Or maybe he had and just chose not to focus on it. "I'll figure it out," he said. "I always do. That's not fair to you." "Life's not fair, but we deal with it anyway." He pulled out the chair across from her desk, sat down. "You want to know what I think?" "What?" "I think you've already won. Not the vote, that's still up in the air. But the company. You've changed it. People trust you now. They believe you're actually listening. That matters more than any spreadsheet. The board doesn't care about trust. They care about returns. Then show them the returns. The production improvements, the renewed contracts, the fact that morale's better now than it's been in years." Marcus leaned forward. "You've got the proof you needed. Now you just have to believe in it." Elena looked at him for a long time. Then she smiled, tired but genuine. "When did you get so wise?" Somewhere between carrying plates and trying not to mess up your calendar, she laughed, and it sounded like relief. "Thank you, Marcus. For everything. For staying. For believing in this when you had every reason not to." "I believe in you," Marcus said quietly. "That's different." The moment hung between them, charged with something neither of them had named yet. Elena opened her mouth to say something, then closed it, seemed to reconsider. "Come on," Marcus said, standing. "I'm calling you a car. You're going home, sleeping for 8 hours, and showing up tomorrow ready to close this." "Yes, sir." Elena stood, gathered her things. "You're bossy, you know that?" "Someone has to be. You're terrible at taking care of yourself." They rode down the elevator together. The building was empty, silent except for the hum of ventilation and the distant sound of traffic. Outside, the night air was warm. Spring had finally arrived, and Chicago smelled like rain and new growth. Elena's car pulled up. Before getting in, she turned to Marcus. "No matter what happens Tuesday, I want you to know you changed everything. That night at the restaurant, what you did. You didn't just save my life. You reminded me why I was fighting in the first place." Marcus didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. Elena got in the car. Marcus watched it drive away, then caught the train home. Ava was still awake when he got there, sitting at the kitchen table with college brochures spread everywhere. "These just came," she said, excited. "Look, Northwestern has a pre-med program, and University of Chicago has this incredible biochemistry track." Marcus looked at the brochures, elite schools, expensive schools, the kind of places he'd never imagined his daughter attending. "These are all out of state," he said carefully. "Some are, but you said with the new job we could afford it, right?" Marcus sat down next to her. "Baby, we need to talk." Ava's face fell. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong, but there's a board meeting on Tuesday, and depending on how it goes, things might change." Change how? The company might get sold, which means I might not have a job anymore. Ava stared at him. But you just started. You said it was going to be different this time. I know, and it might still be, but I need you to be prepared for the possibility that it doesn't work out. So I should forget about these? She gestured at the brochures. Go back to thinking about community college and part-time jobs? No, you should keep dreaming big. We'll figure it out, whatever happens, but I don't want you getting your hopes up too high. Ava was quiet for a moment, then she said, You really like this job, don't you? It's not just about the money. Marcus was surprised by the observation. Yeah, I do. Because of her, the woman you helped, Elena. It's not... Marcus stopped, reconsidered. It's partly because of her. She's trying to do something good, save something worth saving, and I want to help. Do you like her? Ava asked, and there was something in her voice Marcus couldn't quite read. She's my boss. That's not what I asked. Marcus looked at his daughter, 14 going on 40, too perceptive for her own good. It's complicated, he said finally. That's what adults say when the answer is yes, but they don't want to admit it. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just don't notice because you're too busy working. She said it without accusation, just fact. Marcus felt the guilt settle in his chest. I'm sorry, baby. I know I've been gone a lot. It's okay. I get it. You're trying to build something better for us. Ava gathered up the brochures. But Dad, whatever happens Tuesday, you did the right thing. Helping her, taking the job, all of it. I'm proud of you. Marcus pulled her into a hug. I love you, Ava. Love you too. Tuesday arrived with a thunderstorm. Marcus took it as an omen, unclear whether good or bad. The board meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. Elena arrived at 8, calm and professional in a way that made Marcus think she'd barely slept despite his insistence. Ready? He asked. No, but I'm doing it anyway. They went over the presentation one more time. The numbers were good, better than good. Production efficiency up 18%. Quality scores improved. 2 new contracts signed. Employee satisfaction at a 5-year high. But Marcus knew numbers weren't everything. The board would vote based on fear as much as data. Fear of risk, fear of change, fear of fighting an uphill battle when an easy exit was available. At 9:45, board members started arriving. Marcus greeted them, showed them to the conference room, tried to read their expressions. Whitmore looked tired. Patricia looked annoyed. The others were impossible to read. At 10, Elena walked into the conference room. Marcus watched from his desk, connected via laptop to take notes. Whitmore called the meeting to order. Elena, the floor is yours. Elena stood, and for the next 40 minutes, she made her case. She showed the improvements, highlighted the renewed contracts, explained the roadmap forward. She was passionate but controlled, confident but humble, exactly what the moment needed. When she finished, the room was quiet. Then Whitmore spoke. Thank you, Elena. That was comprehensive. I think we're ready to vote. He looked around the table. The question before us is whether to accept MedTech's acquisition offer or give Elena the 6 months she's requesting to execute her turnaround plan. All in favor of accepting the offer? Marcus held his breath. 4 hands went up. Patricia. 2 others Marcus recognized as the most conservative members, and one he hadn't expected, a younger board member who'd seemed sympathetic. All in favor of giving Elena 6 months? 7 hands, including Whitmore's. Marcus exhaled. Motion carries, Whitmore said. Elena, you have your 6 months. Don't make us regret this. Elena's face didn't change, but Marcus saw her hands unclench under the table. Thank you. You won't regret it. The meeting adjourned. Board members filed out, some congratulating Elena, others looking skeptical. When the room finally cleared, Elena sat down heavily in her chair. Marcus gave her a minute, then stepped into the conference room. You did it, he said. We did it. Elena looked up at him. I couldn't have done this without you, Marcus. Any of it. You would have found a way. Maybe, but it wouldn't have been as good. She stood. Come on, I'm buying you lunch. Somewhere that's not the office cafeteria. They went to a diner 3 blocks away. The kind of place with worn booths and coffee that tasted like burned hope. Elena ordered a burger. Marcus got the same. "This is terrible coffee," Elena said after her first sip. "Yeah, but it's honest about being terrible. That counts for something." They ate in comfortable silence for a while. Outside, the rain had stopped and sun was breaking through the clouds. "What happens now?" Marcus asked. "Now we execute. Implement the equipment upgrades, maintain the production improvements, prove to the board they made the right call." Elena paused. "And I need to figure out my executive team. Can't run a company without a real COO and operations leadership. You've got candidates in mind?" "A few, but I was thinking," Elena set down her coffee cup. "You've been doing executive assistant work for 5 weeks. How would you feel about a promotion?" Marcus stared at her. "To what?" "Director of operations. You'd oversee manufacturing, quality control, facilities management, everything David Chen used to handle, except you'd actually do it right." "Elena, I don't have any experience." "You have better instincts than people with decades of experience. You listen to the people doing the work. You ask the right questions, and people trust you." She leaned forward. "I know it's a risk. I know you'd be learning on the job, but I think you can do it." Marcus thought about it. About the impossibility of going from waiter to director in 6 weeks. About all the ways he could fail. But he also thought about Carl Donovan and the other supervisors he'd talked to. About how they'd opened up to him because he spoke their language, understood their reality. About how maybe that mattered more than an MBA. "Okay," he said. "I'll try. That's all I'm asking." They finished lunch, walked back to the office through Chicago streets that felt different somehow. Lighter. Over the next 6 months, Marcus learned what it meant to run operations for a company that was fighting to survive. He made mistakes, plenty of them. Approved equipment purchases that took too long to arrive. Miscalculated production schedules. Got lost in technical specifications he didn't understand. But he also got things right. He implemented the changes Carl and other supervisors had been requesting for years. He rebuilt trust between floor workers and management. He created systems that actually worked instead of just looking good on paper. And slowly, the company stabilized. Production numbers improved month over month. Contracts were renewed. New clients signed on. The stock price started climbing back up. By December, Voss Dynamics was profitable again. Not spectacularly, not enough to satisfy the most aggressive investors, but enough to prove Elena had been right. The company was worth saving. The board meeting that month was different. Whitmore opened by congratulating Elena on the turnaround. Patricia actually smiled. And when they voted to reject a new acquisition offer, this time from a different competitor, it was unanimous. After the meeting, Elena pulled Marcus aside. "We did it," she said. "Actually did it. You did it. I just helped." "Stop being modest. It's annoying." Elena smiled. "I have something for you. A bonus for everything you did this year." She handed him an envelope. Marcus opened it, saw the check inside, and felt his stomach drop. "This is $200,000. "Yes." "Elena, this is what you're worth, what you earned." She held up a hand before he could protest. "Marcus, you saved this company. You could have walked away after that first week, found another job, kept your life simple. But you stayed. You fought alongside me. You deserve this." Marcus looked at the check. Combined with the money she'd given him in February, he had enough for Ava's college fund. Enough for a down payment on a house in a good neighborhood. Enough to build the life he'd always wanted for them. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Thank you." Elena paused. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Sure. That night at the restaurant, why did you really help me?" "The truth." Marcus thought about it, about all the reasons he'd given. Doing the right thing, not walking past problems, trying to be better than he'd been. "I think I was tired of being invisible," he said finally. "Tired of being the person who just served plates and disappeared. You were sitting there, alone and scared, and I realized I could either keep being invisible or I could do something that mattered, even if it was risky, even if it didn't make sense." Elena was quiet for a moment. "I'm glad you chose to matter." "Me too." They stood in the hallway outside the conference room, and Marcus became aware of how close they were standing, of the way Elena was looking at him, not as an employee or a subordinate, but as something else. Elena, I know, she said quickly. I know this is complicated. You work for me. There are power dynamics and professional boundaries, and 1,000 reasons this would be a terrible idea. But I can't stop thinking about you, about us, about what might happen if we stopped pretending this is just professional. She met his eyes. Tell me I'm reading this wrong. Tell me it's just me, and I'll drop it. We'll go back to being boss and employee and nothing more. Marcus should have said yes, should have agreed that it was complicated and inappropriate and impossible. Instead, he said, "It's not just you." Elena exhaled, something between relief and fear. Okay, so what do we do? I don't know. Figure it out together? That's not much of a plan. I'm still learning how to make plans. Give me time. Elena laughed, and it was the first real, unguarded laugh Marcus had heard from her. Okay, we'll figure it out. They didn't kiss, didn't make any grand declarations, just stood in that hallway and acknowledged that something had changed between them, something that had been building since that first night when Marcus had slipped a note onto a check and changed both their lives. Christmas came. Marcus spent it with Ava, who'd been accepted to Northwestern's pre-med program with enough financial aid to make it actually possible. She was ecstatic. Marcus was terrified and proud in equal measure. Elena invited them to dinner on New Year's Eve. Her, Marcus, Ava, and Marcus's cousin Dre, who still couldn't quite believe Marcus was dating his boss. This is weird, Dre said, looking around Elena's penthouse apartment. Like, really weird. Shut up, Marcus muttered. But it wasn't weird. It was right. Elena and Ava talked about science and medicine and college, while Marcus and Dre caught up. They ate dinner around a table that had once seemed impossible for someone like Marcus to reach. When midnight came, they stood on Elena's balcony watching fireworks over Lake Michigan. Ava and Dre were inside arguing about something, leaving Marcus and Elena alone. New Year, Elena said. New beginning. Feels like we've had a lot of those this year. We have, but this one's different. She took his hand. This one we chose. Marcus pulled her close, kissed her while fireworks exploded overhead. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. But it was real. Honest. Built on a foundation of trust and risk, and the stubborn refusal to quit when quitting would have been easier. When they pulled apart, Elena smiled. What are you thinking? That a year ago, I was a waiter carrying plates. And now I'm here, with you, running operations for a company I helped save. It's insane. The best things usually are. They went back inside. Ava and Dre had opened champagne, sparkling cider for Ava, and were toasting to the new year. Marcus raised his glass. To taking risks, to doing the right thing even when it's hard, to finding people worth fighting for. To second chances, Elena added. To Dad finally figuring out his life, Ava said with a grin. They drank, laughed, made plans for the year ahead. Later, after Dre and Ava had left, after the fireworks had ended, and the city had settled into the quiet hours of the new year, Marcus and Elena sat on her couch and talked about the future. Do you ever regret it? Elena asked. Taking that risk at the restaurant? Getting involved in all this? Marcus thought about the question, about everything that had happened since that cold February night. The fear, the chaos, the uncertainty, but also the growth, the change, the discovery that he was capable of more than he'd ever imagined. No, he said, not even a little bit. Good, because I have plans for you, Marcus Lane. Oh yeah? What kind of plans? The kind that involve running a company together, building something that matters, maybe, eventually, building a life together. She said it casually, but Marcus heard the hope underneath. I like those plans, he said. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city through floor-to-ceiling windows. Chicago stretched out below them, beautiful and broken and full of possibility, just like them. Marcus thought about the note he'd written on that cocktail napkin 6 months ago. 10 words that had changed everything. Your bodyguard is going to kill you. Do not go with him. 10 words. One choice. A moment of courage that had led to this, sitting in a penthouse with a woman he'd once served risotto, planning a future he'd never thought possible. Life was strange that way. You make one decision, take one risk, help one stranger, and suddenly you're not the same person anymore. You're someone who matters, someone who chose to stand up instead of walking past, someone who found that the biggest rewards come from the moments when you decide to care about someone else's crisis as much as your own. "Thank you," Marcus said quietly. Elena looked at him. "For what?" "For reading the note, for trusting me, for giving me a chance to be more than I was." "You were always more than you were, Marcus. You just needed someone to see it." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Besides, I should be thanking you. You saved my life in more ways than one." Outside, the city kept moving. Inside, two people who'd started as strangers sat together, building something neither of them had planned, but both of them needed. It wasn't a fairy tale. There would be more challenges ahead, board meetings and budget fights and the messy reality of building a relationship across different worlds. But they'd face it together, the way they'd faced everything else. One decision at a time, one risk at a time, one day at a time. And that, Marcus thought, was enough.